Okay. Would anyone would like to share anything or comment on anything or ask any questions this morning?
Yes, Master Kim, this is Jan.
Yes.
I had a really funny experience. It was really amazing that when we were breathing, it suddenly came to me that we're born and we start breathing, and then when we die, we stop breathing, and we don't even think about it. We just breathe, and for our whole life, we're just breathing without even having to think about it. It was like, it just seemed to me hilarious.
You know, as asinine as it sounds, it is actually one of the greatest realizations a person can have. It's like that actually shows that your breathing is getting somewhere, whether believe it or not. Because what you just said, you'll notice is actually in every Taoist text, especially in the breathing portion. And it talks about how we breathe. And then when we die, we don't. And so most people, don't think about that because it's an of course, right? But I find that the more present we become with the obvious, the better our practice. So thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna say that even though it doesn't seem very, how should I say, no, special is not the word. It doesn't seem very of any significance. I'd like to say it's actually a rather significant experience. And I think you should really kind of treasure that and actually continue to have this type of obvious realizations. I think you'll find much fruit in it. It was really good.
Put a big smile on my face. Thank you, Master Kim.
You're welcome. When I had my version, of that realization, something similar was like, it's a really interesting experience actually when you have this kind of experience. It's hilarious, it's accepting, at the same time it's like obvious. It's a good, really interesting experience actually. And when I had my version of that, there was a certain kind of acceptance and appreciation of life. And it was kind of like everything, it sounds a little odd, but you know how like, oh yeah, you would know this experience really well. You know that experience where when you're in nature and all of a sudden you go into nature and you're in nature, but all of a sudden you realize you're in nature and nothing special is going on, but you're like, oh, this is where we come from. It's kind of like the feeling. And so it's like, oh, this is how it's always been. And oh, I'm part of nature. And you start having these really obvious realizations. And all of a sudden you're, and it's this dumb realization where you go, oh, I'm part of nature. And of course you're part of nature. Or, oh, I'm in nature. Of course you're in nature. But it's like, for some reason, you weren't present with it before. And when you become present with your dantian like that, you actually have this experience of being part of nature while you're wherever you are. It doesn't really matter. And you all of a sudden start enjoying the sunshine. You start all of a sudden enjoying like nature in a very different way where you just start enjoying it. Like everything seems just great. And also not uncommonly, everything seems hilarious. It's just funny for some reason. And so, and I'm sure that as the audience is listening, that you can all relate. Like you're just out there and you're just in a good mood and you're just present with it and you just have a good time. And the more we do these practices, the more each moment becomes like that, where you settled into yourself. And I feel like that's actually the greatest gift of these practices. You just become settled in each moment. And you are a part of it. And if you're a part of it, it becomes really distinct and obvious. So, okay, well, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Welcome. Okay, would anyone else like to share anything or comment on anything or ask any questions or?
I had a couple of funny experiences also this morning. One was I started feeling like it make any sense that I'm standing up. Like, how am I standing up? And it sort of felt like a physical koan. I was like, what's holding me up? And I started to feel the up and down more, but I also started to feel a lot of just the tensegrity more clearly. And my mind sort of settled when I was trying to figure that out. So that was one. And then another is the other day in standing meditation, I started to feel like a laughing Buddha. Like it sort of felt like my hands were in sort of regular standing meditation stance, but it felt like they were resting on my belly. And then today when we were lying down, I had that same thing where when I went to feel for the walls of the dantian, I was feeling the edges of my torso, the front and the back of my torso, and then it sort of expanded where I felt like my hands were resting like on the energetic outside dantian, and it felt sort of humorous. And then when we went to do the form, I felt like this large man with like a big belly and tiny little, it was like my arms were tiny and my legs were tiny and I was just being propelled by this huge belly. So yeah, wanted to share that.
Yeah. You had a proper experience of your tensegrity. That's really good. That actually, when you have a proper experience of your tensegrity, your arms actually feel rather small. Because you're no longer holding your arms up improperly, and so and actually the experience of what you said is actually very accurate, which is it feels like your arms are resting on your belly, and so that is a very distinct experience of tensegrity, where you feel like your arms are resting on something, and actually it's just. And then the other one is that your arms actually feels really small, and so that's good. That's a proper experience of the dantian. And then when that happens, you actually have that experience that you described, where you feel what do you call that? Where you feel that the arm is part of the front and the back shell, like I described. And so, yeah, that's actually really good. That's that means that your focus is diffusing, and that means that your attention is becoming more relaxed, and that you're starting to rely more on your awareness instead of on focus. So that's actually both a physiological and a mental change. You can't actually, it happens at the same time. So that's good.
Thank you, Master Kim.
You're welcome. Okay. So, anyone else would like to share anything or ask any questions? Okay.
Yes. I just wanted to share an experience I had with the breathing, which was I had read before in like inner fire texts about, they say that the smaller your focal point is, like the more powerful it will be. And I tried it and it never really worked for me at the time. So I found for me, I needed it bigger. And like the bigger it was, the easier it was and the more powerful. But today, just, becoming aware of the walls of the Dantian, my system wanted to inhale into Dantian and then exhale into Dantian. And it felt like it was inhaling and exhaling into like a point. And it felt like the more I was breathing, the smaller the point got. It got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt the smaller it got, the better it felt. And the more the heat went up. So I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. So that was just really cool that, it's like you read that and then, it's like you remember it as you actually have the experience. And it feels like it felt like from that experience that the more, actually, the smaller the focal point, I mean, I guess this makes sense, but this, like, the smaller the one point, the more the overall system balances.
Yes. That's actually very accurate. So yeah, this is the reason why I always say, when you read these things or when you learn these things, don't try and do it. Just do what feels natural to you and just kind of have that in your awareness. And then when the time comes, where your body falls into place, use it as kind of a confirmation that your body is trying to balance itself and that your body has arrived. Because, when you try and do these things, if your body is not ready for it, then you can't do it. And so you need to actually do what actually works, what allows you to have the kind of experience that you're looking for, such as having to start with a bigger area. And so that was a good example. And, it's kind of it's an arrival. And so when you learn these things, it's actually better to not think of it as a starting point, but as a finishing point. Yeah. I think probably the thing that I actually appreciated the most is kind of learning something very concrete, but having the freedom to explore and having a very fundamentally exploration-based learning with some very clear targets to hit. And it's kind of interesting. I met one other Tai Chi practitioner who actually had basically just a teacher, kind of like Master Chen, where wasn't a school or anything like that. This person just had a few students. Was very similar to my experience. It was like said the teacher would never teach anything. He just showed something. And then he said, okay, now figure it out amongst you guys. And they would try and they would try. And then once they figured it out, they said, oh, okay, you figured that out. Then he would show the next thing. And so, it's kind of like just one cool thing after the next. And that was kind of my experience with Master Chen. There wasn't as much teaching as there was in the modern sense that we know it. There was actually more just something you need to try, like kind of like almost like breadcrumbs on the way. And it's like, I feel like that approach is just so powerful. And it just kind of reminds me of that type of learning and that approach. And so anyways, so that's a good experience. It's like, and I'm going to say now that you've experienced it, you know, not that you don't know this already from me saying this over and over again, but, you know, now let go and just next time, see if you can do it. But if it doesn't come, just go back to what actually works in that moment. And now you've had a cool experience. And a better way to say it is that, this is where my system is at today. And, you know, so it's kind of like there are two different aspects to cultivation. There's an aspect where if you keep cultivating, really, like you get to do something that you were never able to do before. The frustrating thing about it is that once you do it and you arrive and you're able to do this thing that you were never able to do before, it takes actually quite a bit of time before it stabilizes where you can do it consistently. Where once you do it, then it goes away. And it's like super frustrating. And then you don't know why it went away. And then you struggle to figure it out. And then you learn more from the struggle. And then as your understanding expands on this one thing you're trying to figure out, by the time you can stabilize it, you understand the whole much better. And so save yourself the frustration of trying to do it and instead actually just see what happens. And if not, go back and then just bring awareness as to what may have allowed you to be in a place where you could have that kind of focal point. And it's just an easy awareness. You have an easy target. And so it's kind of like you're like water, like Bruce Lee always talks about. Be like water, my friend, right? And in there, see how the water has a very clear focal point. It's a path of least resistance downstream. And so in the same way, your dantian is this one point. It's the smallest point possible. And that's downstream. So you're gonna get there eventually. And it happens as you relax further and further. It doesn't come from trying because it just causes tension. It causes from being more and more relaxed and being able to go downstream better where naturally it just gathers in one focal point. That means that your whole body is more relaxed. And so it's kind of interesting. You're saying that it allowed you to connect to a bigger area of your body. The reverse is probably actually true, is a bigger area of your body was relaxed. Therefore, you could actually gather in a more pinpointed area. And so as you breathe, you know, notice these things as you try and go towards one point. And if it doesn't, then just do what you can while noticing things you didn't notice before.
Thank you so much, Master Kim. That is really, really helpful, and that kind of puts the whole thing in context. So thank you very much for the teaching.
You're welcome. Okay, very good. Okay, so I'm pretty much done cleaning here. Anything else anybody would like to share in closing or comment on or ask anything? Okay, very good. Had some really good sharings today. Congratulations on your gong fu, on your accumulation, and enjoy the rest of your day. Living in this, I would like to say, living in this wonder, continuing to pursue the path. So have a great day of cultivation.
Thank you so much, Master
Thank
Kim.
you so much, Master
Thank you,
Kim.
Master Kim. Have a great weekend.
Welcome. You as well.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Bye. Welcome. Bye.